Beginning in the 1980s, a series of events began to unfold that would influence the role the Codes Administration would play in Nashville over the next 20 years. These events, characterized by both tragedy and innovation, would ultimately position Nashville to be the leading city in America for business growth, relocation, and livability at the start of the 21st century. On November 24, 1986, John Spaulding was found dead in his hotel room while staying at the Ramada Inn at Opryland. He was in town with his wife attending a convention of the National School Supply and Equipment Association. The cause of death was from carbon monoxide poisoning.
That tragedy brought a lot of attention and focus on effective codes administration. Once again, the cycle repeated itself, and the city of Nashville adopted a gas code and a mechanical code in 1990 and set up a system for requiring the licensing, testing and licensing of gas and mechanical contractors, and set up within the codes department a gas mechanical inspection division.
We had electricity for the electrical code, and we had the plumbing code for water and sewer. But there was really, we found out nobody covering gas-fired appliances. So we decided it was time for a new gas code.
Codes are, again, constantly in a state of development of construction, an event or tragedy followed by focus and attention, either the development of an ordinance, a new ordinance, or the improvement of an existing ordinance.
Tragedy would strike again on Christmas Eve 1989. That night, a fire broke out in the John Sevier Retirement Center in Johnson City. 15 people died as a result of the fire. At least 26 people were taken to area hospitals due to injuries sustained from burns and smoke inhalation. This caused the state of Tennessee to launch an intensified investigation to find out the cause of the Christmas Eve tragedy.
There's a lot of attention by the officials in Johnson City, but also by members of the state legislature, to determine what went wrong with that fire. And some of what went wrong in Johnson City was building codes, fire codes, and code enforcement. And there was a lot of attention being given by the state legislature to enact an ordinance that would require certification and licensing of building inspectors and fire safety inspectors.
But on Christmas Eve 1989, the residents of the John Sevier Retirement Home fell victim to the absence of a law requiring building and fire safety inspectors to be licensed by the state fire inspector.
The state of Tennessee subsequently did pass a bill that required building and fire safety inspectors to be licensed by the state fire marshal's office. A condition of licensing was that you also had to be certified. So since 1990, the other thing we've seen is we've seen an improvement in the professionalism of our plans examiners and our field inspectors. They know the code, they know how to apply the code, they've been tested and certified and licensed in what they do.
In 1990, Mayor Bill Boner appointed Terry Cobb as the new director for the Codes Administration. Cobb began his tenure by reorganizing the department so that it would be more efficient and responsive to the needs of a city embarking on the 21st century. Under Terry Cobb, the mission of the Codes Administration began to expand as well. In addition to its traditional role of building and structural safety, there became a focus as well on quality of life issues.
There were a couple of things that I really want to set out to accomplish initially, and the department had some needs. The first, I think, dealt with efficiency of operations. In other words, all of these codes were no longer fragmented, but still within the department, I thought there was a greater need to maybe redesign some of the business functions for greater efficiency. But also, I wanted to instill in everyone in the codes department a great sense of focus on customer service to citizens, to contractors, to other departments, and internally to each other.
In 1994, Mayor Phil Bredesen, along with the Metro Council, passed an ordinance which amended Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code and zoning regulations. It became known as the Tree Ordinance.
One thing I specifically remember Mayor Bredesen stepping forward to champion was the development of a tree ordinance for the city. In about 1993 or 94, the city was in the process of developing a new zoning code, and one of the chapters in the draft for the new zoning code was a tree ordinance, which would require that trees and landscaping be planted around the new developments as we developed them. He stepped forward and said, let's pull this chapter out and let's adopt the tree ordinance now while we're in a growth curve.
We looked at other cities, we looked at Atlanta, we looked at comparable cities and found out what they were doing, and we said, okay, let's adopt a tree ordinance which requires people who are developing land to put trees back on their property. I mean, they'd clearly just been clear cutting land before. Bulldozing everything makes it easier to build. So we adopted this tree ordinance, which required trees, which helped the environment. Aesthetics was much better.
Shortly after its passage, the impact of the tree ordinance on the community was far-reaching. Although it has been amended several times since 1994, the tree amendment continues to play a vital role in Nashville's development. It was the precursor to a movement that would leave its mark on Nashville, the new urbanism.
New urbanism means many things to many people, but my sense is that at its core, the thought of new urbanism was for us to look back at what made cities successful, what it was about density within cities, about architecture within cities, about the location of mixed uses within neighborhoods. All of these things had contributed historically to the success of cities, and by asking us to look back at those things, they hoped and believed we'd create new and successful urban spaces. When thought about it that way, I think new urbanism is here to stay because cities are here to stay.
There's a whole theory that if it looks better, people behave better. That there's some debate on that, but I think there is something to that. It's a matter of civic pride as well. Why should we always settle for the bare bones asphalt as far as the eye can see?
In September 1999, Bill Purcell was elected Nashville's new mayor. His term of office would coincide with Nashville's entry into the 21st century. Central to Mayor Purcell's vision for Nashville's future was the quality of life for its citizens, and it would be in the neighborhoods throughout Davidson County that he would plant the seed for Nashville's future.
Our focus on neighborhoods has, in my opinion, brought a much higher quality of life in the whole large city. One of the reasons we're so successful now and recognized nationally in so many ways, most recently as America's most affordable and livable city, is because of the understanding of the quality of life in every neighborhood of the city. Codes is critical to this. Codes both as a standard that can be applied across both old and new housing, but also then as the critical enforcer of that standard. And in my estimation, codes have been a critical partner to this administration and to the whole city in moving us into those #1 rankings.
Mayor Purcell ran on a platform of being the neighborhood mayor and trying to build stronger and better neighborhoods that produced a higher quality of life as a community. Part of that has been in adding and replacing sidewalks, which I can tell you from my own childhood, where I grew up in a city, in a town really, a suburb from the 30s, where sidewalks were everywhere and kids were required to ride their bikes on the sidewalks and there were curb cuts for the bikes and everything, that it changes the whole life of a child to be able to be independent on a bicycle and use sidewalks and not be dependent on being taxied around town by parents.
In 2001, the Metro Council took an important step in modernizing and strengthening Code's building safety by passing the Property Standards Act. This ordinance provided consistent and comprehensive criteria for the development of commercial as well as residential buildings.
The new Property Standards Code was a model, frankly, not just for Nashville, but for the country. It did something very important here by including all of our commercial properties within the standards. In fact, An area where there had been no standards before suddenly had a comprehensive standard that could be easily understood and much more easily enforced. My sense is that the Property Standards Code will be seen in every corner of this city for all the years to come.
The Property Standards Act, which was passed in 2001, has really helped to improve the neighborhood quality within Nashville. Buildings are something that needs to be maintained. A building may pass the initial building codes and have its use and occupancy, but if it's not maintained, the public's safety could possibly be compromised. Also, just the general appearance of a neighborhood is affected if a building's not properly maintained, and this act helps to maintain the quality of the neighborhoods.
That code applied not only to the residential buildings, as the housing code had, but also to the non-residential buildings. For the first time in Nashville's history, we were enforcing minimum property maintenance standards on the commercial buildings. And I guess, was the linchpin in the success and the development since that time for better neighborhoods.
Technological innovation has played a role in bringing about a greater sense of safety and reliability in the buildings we work in, the homes we live in, and the products we use. Stricter and stronger codes enforcement over the last 30 years has greatly improved our sense of well-being and raised the quality of life we enjoy as a community.
Codes are all about building safety. That's number one. But they're also, well, health and safety, but they're also about welfare and convenience. And codes develop in cycles, as we talked about, where the development of code will quickly follow a tragedy where a need is identified and focused on and addressed. But as new products emerge and as new technology emerges, codes develop right along with those things as well.
The technologies that are developed further continue to stretch the codes and their ability to maintain these standards. That's why there's a process of updating the codes, which every 3 years, 2 or 3 years, there is a model code update. And additionally, Metro has its own method of altering the building codes to adapt to local standards. The new technologies, as they develop, are addressed in these updated building codes.
Everyone grooms their hair with blow dryers, with hair dryers now, and now we're using electrical appliances in close proximity to our sinks and to water basins. So we've got to now figure out how to make the electrical appliances work in proximity to water. So now we have ground fault protection on our outlets in our bathrooms and in our kitchens, any area that has water.
The ability of the public and private sectors to work together have contributed greatly to Nashville's growth as a city. The Carhorn Symphony Hall, scheduled to be open in the fall of 2006, is an example of what can be accomplished when such cooperation exists.
On the Carhorn Symphony Center, we found that we were needing to incorporate several new technologies which weren't necessarily addressed by the building code. We were able, however, to have several early meetings with the Building Codes Department, and they helped us to address how to incorporate these technologies and still maintain the general intent of the building code and providing for that health, safety, and welfare of the public that would be enjoying the performances of the building.
We live differently today than we lived in the 1950s. So codes have developed to accommodate those changes in technology, those changes in lifestyle, those changes in our expectations.
Presently, Nashville is in the vanguard of American cities that have produced and are maintaining a positive and growing business and economic environment. This is reinforced by an equally strong commitment by the city's leaders to maintaining a quality of life for its citizens that is reflected in the many vibrant neighborhoods throughout the community. And the rest of the country is taking notice.
For 2 years in a row, Nashville has been the #1 city in America for expansion and relocation of business. These business CEOs, these business leaders understand that there's a very, very good quality of life for them and for their families, but they could not come here if there wasn't a good business environment as well. The Bank of New York told us, and they are America's oldest bank, that when they came to Nashville, they found it easier to construct a new building, to do all that they needed to bring what is among the largest investments in the last decade here, than they had at any other place in America in the whole history of the bank. They recognized that our codes, both by their terms and our codes enforcement by its support of those codes, in fact makes this an incredibly easy place to live, to work, to build.